You could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello everyone, today we're meeting Lance Cayko. He is a serial entrepreneur, also co-host of his own podcast, Inside the Firm, as well as the co-founder of the architecture and construction firms in Northern Colorado. Hello, Lance. Thank you for joining us today.
Anna, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. So let's start a conversation by diving into your personal journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Great question. So I grew up in Northwest North Dakota, and I'm 40 years old now. So my journey started way back when I was about 13 years old, I would say. I grew up in between a cattle ranch and a sugar beet farm. And then the sugar beet farm, my dad was the main farmhand working for his dad. And I tried irrigating with him the sugar beets one summer. It was kind of my first, real job where we had to be there sort of every day and everything. And I lasted maybe about a week. I didn't get along with my dad who raised me, but and that was sort of one of the issues. But the other one was it was just not the kind of work that really appealed to me at all. And so that if anybody's ever been in Northwest North Dakota in the summer, the mosquitoes are actually probably the worst in the nation. And so trying to pick up and carry around these heavy irrigation tubes while the mosquitoes were almost carrying me away and my dad yelling at me and everything, I was like, this is just not for me. And he said, well, you got to do something. I'm here to raise kids with a strong Protestant work ethic, and you need some skills under your belt. And I said, no problem. I've always been interested in construction, and I've always been that child that was always drawing in a sketchbook. You're trying to understand how things work. A person of the Lego generation, so to speak, where we're building stuff with building blocks and Legos and everything like that. And I said, well, what if I called up your best friend? And his best friend's name was Bruce. He was a general contractor, and he was obviously doing construction. And he said, sure. And so I called up Bruce and I said, I can't work with my dad anymore. I will do anything to be on the job site. And he goes, sure, you can be my gopher. You can go for this. You can go for that. When you're done going for the things, then you can get up on the roof and do roofing with us. He said, we just got a contract to do 80 roofs this summer. We're going to wake up at the crack of dawn. We're going to have it torn off, the old roof torn off by about 10 a.m. We're going to have it put back on by 2 or 3 p.m. And I was the best dang gopher that he ever had. I would pick up everything and get it all cleaned up as soon as I possibly could. And then I got to be on the roof. And then I tried to learn every step of the whole process. And what the epiphany that really came to me was from Bruce throughout the summer. And at one point, I can't remember if it was on payday or whatever day it was, we were talking, and he goes, well, how, he paid me $7.25 an hour. And he said, how much, what do you think I charge the clients for an hour of your labor? And I said, I don't know, $7.25. Because I had, 13 years old, no idea how business works in terms of services or products or anything like that. And he laughed and he said, no, I usually charge them 3 to 4 times whatever I'm paying you. And I go, oh, why do you do that? And he explained, well, I got to cover insurance. I got to cover the liability. I got to cover overhead. And then he said, and I have to make profit. So whatever after I'm done paying you, after I'm done paying all the overhead and expenses, whatever's left over, I get to keep or put away for a rainy day. If there is actually, pun intended, rainy days where there's no work to do or anything like that, and people still got to eat. So and then I also saw, it was a really good comparison at that point between the dad who raised me and Bruce in terms of the freedom that they got in either situation. Bruce had more freedom because he had more financial prowess and he made more money. So for me, it wasn't, one of my favorite quotes ever is from the rapper Kanye West, now known as Ye. And he says in one of his lyrics, having money isn't everything, but not having it is. And growing up in a very lower middle class family and hearing mom and dad worry about money like that, I was always very anxious about asking for just anything, even the most basic stuff like shoes and stuff like that. So I just never wanted myself to feel like that once I was able to actually earn my own money in my own way, or my children or anybody else, that I was supposed to take care of throughout my life. So that's really where everything started for me. And then I saw what Bruce did, and he could do everything. He could do almost every kind of trade there was in construction because he was a general contractor. And I made it my own little plan of every summer up until I was 21. Then I would work a different trade of construction because I wanted to be like him. I thought this is the way out for me. And I mean, the town I grew up in was like only 500 people. It was like a little village. It wasn't even incorporated. So that was kind of my big window of opportunity to do it. So I did that. I learned every trade I could up until I was 21. After I graduated high school, I went to a tech school for 2 years. It was called North Dakota State's College of Science. I went for building construction technology with just an associate's degree. The idea with that associate's degree is you learn how to become a general contractor from like a paperwork standpoint. You learn how to do all the takeoffs, but they also still continue to teach you all the trades. In my last semester, and that was the first time too that I really had a choice of what I wanted to do. And I was kind of a lower B average student in high school. I just wasn't into it. There's not a lot of choice in a class of 20 people in a town of that small. So once I got to this first tech school, it was like, oh my gosh, I started thriving. I was on the dean's list every semester. I graduated at the top of the class. And in that last semester, the capstone project is to build a house. And I started looking at the blueprints and I thought, well, I was just curious. And as a person who is always interested in the truth and is driven by that, like, why did the architect draw it this way? And so all of these things were kind of coming together. The curiosity, I was excelling at school for the first time. I really believed in going to school and learning through that. And then the third thing was I learned how to monetize going to school. So I'm part Native American. And if you're a Native American in this country and you apply yourself, you have your opportunity for scholarships and putting yourself through school and basically getting paid for it is paramount. I mean, you can do it. I'm in the minority of people who actually do that in the Indian community, but it's still alive and thriving in that kind of way. So I decided I was going to well, I can be a builder now. I've got all the skills for that, but it would be I could get paid twice if I become an architect. And I really want to know why they drew the plans they did. So I applied to the school 70 miles north of there, North Dakota State University, got into the architecture program. The freshman year, you start with 350 people, and then it's very competitive, and then they only select 50 from there. I was one of the fortunate folks that got selected into the 50, and then again, continued this acceleration, graduated at the top of the class there, won a Peter F. McKinsey Award, ended up doing 3 theses, became a McNair Scholar. And then that culminated in me eventually moving to Colorado and starting my own business 10 years too soon. Why it's 10 years too soon is because I graduated in the Great Recession in 2008 and landed in Colorado in 2009. I lasted about 9 months at the firm I got a job with before getting laid off. So coming out of there, I was still unlicensed, but I was bound and determined to not have to move back to North Dakota where it was very cold. Just Colorado kind of was calling me with the mountains and everything like that. And so knowing I was going to get laid off, what I did is I put out a Craigslist ad and fell back on a bunch of them and fell back on my handyman skills and my carpentry skills. Never had to take out unemployment. I got paid cash. And actually ended up making more money doing that than I did working for those guys before I got laid off. And then I started to land architecture work. I got a house. I got a clinic that I actually brought back to the firm that laid me off. And then I got all of this sort of CAD work with ArcCAD.com and Sumex. And I called up my my best friend, Al Gore, who also got laid off at the same time. I mean, the architecture community was completely decimated in terms of employability back then. Sort of like the tech sector is now with this recession that we're in now. 50% of architects were unemployed at that point. So you had to find your own work, and that was the only way. So I called up Al and I said, hey, Al actually thought, I'm going to go back to school for 1 year. That's all the longer this recession is going to work or, be. We didn't understand, we were very young and green. We didn't realize that sometimes recessions are 3-4 years. The Great Depressions could be 10 years long, that sort of thing. And so he finished his second master's in construction management. And I said, hey, I've got he had to move back with his mom and dad. He hated that. You could imagine a young American male having to go back into his mom and dad's house. He was just completely dejected. And I said, look, how much money he got? He told me how much money he had. I said, the apartment above me just opened up. I've got work. I think we can make this work. Why don't you come down and let's try it? And he said, done. So he moved down the next week, and we started the firm officially in 2010, F9 Productions. And then we starved for about 3 years. So we're that, instead of us having that classic garage story like Bill Gates has, or even Jeff Bezos, we did it out of an apartment, out of his dining room. He had like no furniture when he moved down here. And so we starved for those first 3 years. We also got some part-time teaching gigs at the University of Colorado Boulder at that time. And that prompted us to hire our first employee. And then from 2013 to now, 2023, it's been a decade of solid growth. We just won the Best of Mile High Award for the best architecture firm in Colorado. And that's where brings me here today, talking to you, and why we started our podcast in 2017 is we wanted to share this story of determination and grit, and with Gen Z, the millennials, Gen X, if they'll have us, that the American dream is still very much alive and well. You just have to go out there and, carpe diem, seize the day, grab the world by the cojones and take control and manifest your own destiny and freedom.
Wow, that's been a long journey for you, but I see how it evolved from, first you made that decision back in the day with your dad. You knew that there's something that you can do on your own without following your parents' footsteps, right? Because a lot of times, parents trying to kind of push you into certain direction. And a lot of that, happens like by default when we go into a certain degree and then we realize it's not for us. But very rarely, like, people could see for themselves from the beginning that this is not the route that I'm choosing. Let me try something else. Let me see what I can do on my own, right? And with you trying and, kind of like following your own journey and seeing how it unfolds, because every journey starts with a single step, right? So, but you have to be willing to take that step. First, you have to take that responsibility of creating your own experiences and life in general. And then with you following those steps, you see how you meet certain people, opportunities come your way. And here we are now. You see how everything is just been built on that foundation. And that's the foundation that you put for yourself in the beginning. And you had faith, even, during hard times, during recession, where you had almost nothing, but you still believe that even with what I have, I could try and see what I can make out of it. And especially when you have somebody who believes in the same dream as you, and you can kind of cooperate together. And then you see what we can build as a result of all of that. And that's a great story. And also, I want people to see that it's not just you, but a lot of people go through the same challenges in life and difficulties. And it's not overnight success. It always takes time. But again, are you willing to put that time and effort towards building your dream? That's the question. How you manage your time on a daily basis? Because we all have 24 hours a day, right? But it matters how we choose to manage that time. A lot of people stuck at 9 to 5 and they hate their jobs. Mm-hmm. And then they think, okay, so what can I do? I have to wake up every single morning and go to that job and make a living. But if you're not spending the rest of the time that you have after you finish 9 to 5 to build something else on the side and transition to that type of, it could be first like a hobby or side gig, then you're never going to find yourself in a place where you feel fulfilled. So what are your thoughts on making that opportunity for yourself when you feel like this is not something I want to do in my life? What can I do now to start something that would be of, pleasure for me, but knowing that it will take time and effort, but also kind of like believing in the process itself, knowing that I will get there.
So I think if you are going to follow any kind of passion that you want to turn into profit and a profession, I think people should try it at least once in their life for sure. And the thing to keep in mind is you need to think of it as you're playing an 18-hole game of golf. It's a long game, and you have to be consistent. So the consistency started, and I'll tell you a story about how I got going on it. Was the consistency was in twofold. When I started putting out those Craigslist ads in 2009 for just handyman work, I would put them. I figured out a system for it. And then the other one was I was putting out all of this content, this CAD content on a website called TurboSquid. And that's how I got noticed by arccat.com. So there's some fundamental things I think that keep very highly productive people like myself and maybe your listeners on this podcast going and towards that trajectory. And that is, I don't really drink. Every once in a while I'll have a drink, and I'm an early riser, and you need to become a morning person. You really have to start owning your mornings. So what I would do in both of those instances was I would wake up like very early, 4 or 5 a.m. I would go to bed very early, 8 or 9 p.m. So I would still get my full rest. But during those golden hours between 4 and 7 a.m. or 5 and 8 a.m., everybody's still in bed. It's very quiet. It's if you're a coffee junkie like me, you can amp yourself up with coffee and get into that super creative mode when everything's quiet around you. It's a very meditative exercise. So what I did is I hacked Craigslist from the standpoint of I looked at my competitors with the handyman stuff, and it was all a bunch of like your classic old curmudgeon guys that were broken down, maybe a little crabby, maybe they have a substance issue. And I thought, I'm going to counter that. Like, what is the opposite of that? The opposite of that is, in my ad would read something like young, smart, handsome, sober, handyman, for hire. And then the other thing I would add is you could actually write a little bit of HTML back in the day, which was awesome on Craigslist. And you could embed images. So I would embed these images of my previous work that I had done carpentry wise, and I would delete the post right away in the morning, and then I would put it back up again. So I'd be at the very top of the list when people were waking up and looking for people to hire and everything. That was my hack every single day. And I was so busy with work after that. And then the other thing I would do after I was done with the posting is then I would make as many CAD models as I could for this website named TurboSquid. Nobody was telling me to do it, but I saw there was an opening for this particular CAD content in the industry, because this was at a pivotal point in the architecture community where we were switching from 2D AutoCAD over to 3-dimensional AutoCAD, so to speak. And so all of the old CAD details and furniture and entourage and stuff needed to be turned over into the 3D stuff. And I was pumping out so much of that stuff, and I was doing it so consistently that I one day got a call from the CFO of TurboSquid, and they said, "Hey, you are like the #1 content producer in the world. I don't know if you know that." And I said, "Well, I'm just being consistent." And I told them about my routine. They go, "Well, how many pieces are you planning to put up?" And I put up, I said some astronomical number, like 5,000 or 10,000 pieces by the end of the year. And they said, "Well, we also recognize that all these manufacturers of building products that are windows and doors and all kinds of stuff like that, they were needing to make that transition too from the 2D world into the 3D world." And they said, "We have a partner, Arccat and Sumex, that are looking to do that. Are you interested in the work?" And I stayed in touch with them for 3 or 4 months while I was doing the handyman work and still feeding my family. I had 2 kids and a wife at that time. And eventually that work turned on and then went through fruition. The last thing that I like to tell everybody in regards to this sort of stuff is I don't think there's a better time to start a business than when there's a big negative that happens. And the negative could be something like, I'm not joking, you got a divorce, you lost a loved one, or you're in a Great Recession, or you're in a Great Depression. Because what that does to you is it puts you in a corner of a corner, and you have no choice but to be optimistic. You have no choice but to be creative with your marketing strategies. You have no choice but to be very, very hungry. You have no choice to be more motivated than you maybe ever would. The opposite scenario is, and I have friends who are thinking about finally starting their own architecture businesses at 40. And like Alex and I are now like 13 years ahead of these guys. And they're hesitant to jump ship. They're hesitant to quit their jobs and jump. And that's a problem. That is a problem because you just have to do it. And that's why I say that these negative instances in life are really the best opportunities. And that's what I use to drive me every single day is I look for the positivity and negativity, and that kind of mindset will propel you throughout life.
No, definitely. And not just that, you have to become uncomfortable enough and feel comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's a problem for a lot of people, because once you become comfortable in that 9-to-5 job, even though you hate it, but it brings money, pays bills, right? You are very, picky what you're gonna try and see, like you're gonna think about this risk as being more exaggerated than it actually is, because in your mind, what if it doesn't work out? So you kind of like fail before even start in your mind, and you're not giving yourself a chance. But when you're in this situation, like you said, when you don't have any other choice but to try, but to stay positive, but believe in yourself, then you just do it, because that's what it comes down to. You have to make action in the end, not just talking, thinking about it. You can, visualize yourself, but if you're not taking any action, nothing will happen in the end. And again, it could turn out to be even better than you expected, but you have to start with something, those single steps, and you have to be consistent. That's another thing that you mentioned. Being consistent is a very important practice, and we have to cultivate that skill as well, because sometimes people try for a few days or even a month, and then they just give up, without you kind of making it a long-term game for yourself in your mind from the beginning. No, that will take time, but eventually you will get there. Again, being committed to the process and making those steps every single day from what you can do from the place that you're in right now. You have the tools available to you. We live in 21st century. Every one of us has a lot of tools available, but sometimes we just don't see it, or we, try to escape from the present moment by any means, like distraction that we have all around us, social media, TV, addictions, right?
Yeah.
So all of that kind of like shifts our focus from something that really matters. And we have to bring that focus back to that present moment and think for ourselves where we want to be, who we want to be, what is our ultimate goal, and what brings us that joy and fulfillment, and how can I make it happen with what I have right now. And you'll be surprised to find people that could help you, or even like trying, certain steps with what you have and see what could unfold. And eventually you'll find yourself in a different place a year from today. But if you only stay on your path and be consistent, that's what matters. Don't you think so?
I agree. Consistency is key. Yeah, that's a key phrase that I just use in life. Consistency is key. Even to the podcast, like, most podcasts fail and most startups fail. It's because of the consistency. You just have to keep grinding and be consistent, and eventually you will have that growth happen. Of course, you need to identify at the beginning. I think this is a very critical point I was just trying to coach one of my sons for this, that he was wanting to start a sort of a personal chef or meal prep service this summer. He's 18. He just finished his first year of college. He's going into business. And, him and his mom were working on this little business plan. And the fundamental thing that they missed was, I said, did you guys find and test if there's even people that want this service? And I went right back to Craigslist. I wrote him a letter before I left for my last fishing trip. And I said, I'll just laid it out for him. Here's exactly what you got to do first is you need to put out a $5 Craigslist ad. Here's the script I wrote for you even. You can test that and see if you can get any clients interested in doing this meal prep service. And so, we've had multiple inventors come in and to the firm, and because we're architects, so they, want us to draw things for them, to do patent drawings and stuff like that. And we've worked with them. And I think this is the big learning lesson that Alex and I had as well was, is there anybody even interested in this product? Like, are there already 50 competitors? You're really trying to find the niche in everything you do. And if you can find that niche, that's the very first step. Then you start with the consistency and keep plowing ahead in that way, and do the fundamental things right? If you're a customer service based business, communication is everything. I tell people this all the time, and I even crap on myself about it. As an architect, I say, like, look, anybody can draw a building. It's true. Like, anybody could technically draw a building if they had enough training to do it. What is going to separate you from the crowd, besides maybe some extra special raw talent from God? The other thing that is the fundamental thing that will separate you from the crowd is communication. How good of a communicator are you? If a client tries to get a hold of you, do you have a fundamental rule like we have at F9, which is we have to get back with them in 1 hour in that same day. And if we don't do that, it's acceptable to do 24 hours. But that sort of fundamental consistency and customer service, that's what separates the winners from the losers in the business world.
Yeah, and actually, I always like to say you have to become the person who over delivers, even more than people expect from you, without them asking for it, because that's how they want to deal with you over and over again. And it's just, there's word of mouth as well. Mm-hmm. People refer to other people, and it just becomes basically free advertisement for you. And again, you have to become that person, and for you it should be normal. And you are your business. You are the face of your business. Mm-hmm. How you deal with others, interact with your clients, that matters. But you have to first start with yourself. You have to build yourself to the point where it's just who you are, and you're not putting like extra effort to it, but it's just how you deal with business and with people. And it's very important for us to be mindful of that. And also knowing that everything comes back to you, whatever you do, whatever you put out to the world, first you have to give, and then you're going to receive it. But sometimes you're not receiving it in the same, I would say, channel. It could come from a different ways for you, but knowing that, I'm doing it because it's good for me, it's beneficial for me, but I have to kind of like build myself in a different ways that I know I'm grounded. I know that I have all this practices integrated on my daily basis, and I'm doing them every single day. And nobody should, check up on me, because I'm responsible for my life. I'm creating my experiences, and that's up to me. And I know that, nothing will distract me. I am focused and I know where I'm going. You have to have that GPS in your mind. What is your direction, right? And always checking with yourself. If something like distracts you from it, you can come back and just continue going to that path. And what do you think would also help people to become more mindful? Maybe some kind of like practices. I don't know if you meditate or any type of sport. So maybe like something that could bring them to that present moment, that could help them to really check in with themselves every single day, to remind that, in the present moment that's where the power is.
I think everybody should delete social media from their phones. And if you need, like, I'm still on social media, but I try to limit it to desktop or laptop only. So that way I'm not distracted after work or before work. So that's a fundamental key. You can still be on Twitter all day long, 9 to 5 and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's just all the notifications that you get on your cell phone, because it's sort of this, everybody's experiencing this now. Let's say you forget your cell phone at home for the day, or your smartphone, it is like an extension of you, and you get this anxiety if you don't have it with you anymore. So if you can tamp that down. What I do in the morning is when I get up, is the first thing I do is I go put on a pot of coffee, and then I make it a point to stretch, pray, and meditate for about the first 15 minutes of the day. I'm 40 years old, so I know I'm not getting any younger. And, my longevity of my health as a professional fisherman and hiker is to try to maintain that. Like I want to be 80 and really, and still a good looking guy, be able to pick up my grandchildren, that sort of thing. And so that's what kind of centers me and grounds me for the day. And then I leap into those golden hours. So, still 2 to 3 golden hours in the morning where nobody's distracting me and I'm getting the most work done even before everybody else gets up. That's what I would recommend. I can't remember the app that I use to learn to meditate, but there's a lot of them out there. I would recommend everybody at least tries and learns how to meditate at some point in their lives. And I want to, if anybody's skeptical about like what meditation really is for me, the way I like to describe it is it's not about like, you're not thinking about nothing. There's going to be negative and positive thoughts that come into your brain and you're quieting them down. They'll still pop up, but it helps you be stoic about it. So like a negative thought will come through, you'll recognize it, and then it goes away. That's how meditation works. Mm-hmm. And so when you learn how to do those things, then what you can do is you can go into, like last summer, one of the things I read, and it was a very powerful book. It was Marcus Aurelius and his book Meditations. And it was learning about stoicism. And this was also like a preconceived notion, just like meditation, I think people have, is I thought like, oh, stoic is just like me doing this. It's not saying anything. It's just sitting there looking stoic. That is not at all what stoicism is. Stoicism is about finding yourself in those negative spaces that I talked about earlier, but seeing the positive and silver linings in them and acting accordingly, and knowing that like, no matter what, you have some chess plays on the game of life. If we try to make a metaphor out of it, and that the game of life is a chess game, even if you just have a pawn left, you can make it into a king if you go all the way to the other side of the board. And now it's the most powerful thing on the board and everything like that. So that's what I would recommend people do. I think those two folds is learn how to meditate, set some time for yourself, quiet time away. Some people do it after work too. I know folks that come home from work and they literally just sit in their car for the first 15 minutes before and unload whatever energy they have by themselves before they step into the house and greet the wife or the husband or whatever. And then layer on that book. I just can't recommend Marcus Aurelius's Meditations enough, because that helps me really navigate even when the worst things happen to me. It's like, yes, it's a bad thing, but the yin and yang life say there's a positive and a negative. So what I do is I go like, good, I'm glad this negative thing happened. I cannot wait to see the positive thing that happens. The more negative it happens, the more positive that's going to come out of it. Like it's going to match in energy.
Right. And I believe we are always presented with the life experiences. And again, it's important your perspective on what do you think that is, just looking at it as your lesson and something that you will learn. And like you said, there's always a light to a darkness, and it's, everything is like in binary kind of like way. You're going to see that light after you go to that experience. Usually we see it retrospectively, and we don't realize it when we've been in the moment, but knowing that everything is happening for you in life, and in any way you're going to benefit from it. Maybe even like you experience some kind of not pleasant feelings in the moment, but you have to become calm and kind of like clear on what that is, and not being reactive to it, rather see it for what it is and just accept it and let it go, and then you will know why it happened. So with you just changing perspective on how you look at things, and the things you look at change, right? So usually it's very important to remind ourselves that it's not life or death situation. We don't have to be stressed out or anxious about it. We just need to allow ourselves to feel that emotion and let it go, and it will become better. Everything in life, it's like a roller coaster, up and down. nothing is, stationary. So we're going to experience different type of emotions. And this is who we are. We're human beings. But again, with us not being suppressing them, repressing them, but rather let it flow. And then we become more at peace with what's happening and just looking at life with a clear, more accepting type of like eyes and perspective. And then we also, the more we care about ourselves, I always say that the more we show ourselves self-love, then the better we are at connecting with others as well. And we don't have to, kind of like be reactive, but rather respond in a proper manner, because everything, like we just mentioned, comes back to you. So you'd rather, make sure your response is right. You can't be responsible for the other person because that's their life, but you're responsible for yourself and how you react to it. So that's something we always have to be mindful of. And yes, meditation practice is very beneficial, and find 15, 20 minutes a day. It's possible for every one of us, either in the morning or before you go to sleep. But it really like bring you to that different place where you release everything that could be stuck within you and just find yourself at peace. And you can be more productive as a result of it. And it will reflect to your personal, professional life. Everything would just be better as the result of it. So I would encourage people to try for themselves, because we learn through experiences. We have to experience that. And, whatever type of, like a picture you have about meditation, it could not be true. You have to see it for yourself, and see how you feel. So, and then you become more clear of what it is. But I know for sure that it will bring benefit, because I experienced it myself and I've heard it from so many people. So it was a really great conversation that we had. Thank you so much. And for those who would like to connect with you, how can they find you?
I will connect with anybody on LinkedIn. So you can just go to linkedin.com and search for Lance, Lance, last name Cayko, Cayko. It is really pronounced like that. You can keep up with everything we're doing architecture and building wise in Colorado here at f9productions.com. You can sign up for our newsletter. We send out 2 newsletters a week. And then if you're interested in listening to our journey, we start at episode 0, go to insidethefirmpodcast.com. We're on all the terrestrial apps, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube. I'll highly recommend everybody goes to episode 0, because that's where we kind of go back in time and tell everybody about when we started the whole thing from scratch, with having no clients, having no built work, anything like that. And it's a 400 episode series of grit, determination, triumph, ups and downs. We lay everything bare, and we have wonderful guests on as well. So check us out.
Wow. Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to also add it in show notes, so it'll be easy for our listeners to find you. And as we close in, what could be the thought for today for our listeners to look into?
If you are ever thinking about taking the leap, just do it. Seize the day, carpe diem, make it happen. Put yourself in a metaphorical corner. Get hungry, get optimistic, get that fire going. And seize, make your life a positive thing.
That's great. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I hope you enjoy your day.
Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.